23, Scheyer's first year. You're manhandled by Tennessee, lose that by double digits. 24, lose to NC State in the Elite Eight. And then 25-26, a Houston blown lead and a Uconn blown lead. Duke can't win with freshmen. They need to pivot. The recruiting style doesn't work. Look at what happened with Kentucky when Cal was there. The comments are relentless circling Duke basketball right now after blowing another lead to a seasoned veteran team like Uconn yesterday in the Elite Eight. And people don't know if this recruiting style and tactics is actually conducive to winning a national championship. It's been over a decade now since we've even seen Duke in the national title game, and this is the longest drought that they've had since K won his first national title in 1991. 2 years in a row, Duke has exited the NCAA tournament to a team like Houston, experienced, seasoned guys, and to a team like Uconn, again, a much older group in today's landscape of college basketball. But it isn't just the losing, it's the style in which they are losing. If we look at the Houston game last year, they were up 14 with 8 minutes left to go in that one, including being up 6 with just under a minute left to go. They lose that game, and then what happened yesterday in the Elite Eight with Uconn, up 19, had a second half lead, and then losing to Uconn at the buzzer. And look, and I'm here to tell you, Duke's problem is not the freshmen, it's where they're putting these freshmen in crucial situations. Now, Caden Boozer's going to get a ton of pushback for his pass that led to Braylon Mullins' 3, but realistically, it wasn't just his fault. It was 3 freshmen and an older vet guy like Isaiah Evans who really are at fault for what happened in that last play. I want to pull it up for you, but March Madness has crazy restriction rules, so I'm just going to tell you, but look, go back and watch it. You guys will see this happen. The problem is on the last play for Uconn is that the lineup was the Boozer twins, Sarr, Evans, and Ngangba. The oldest players are running into their side of the court, and Ngangba and Evans are completely out of the play once the ball's inbounded, which, if we go to that spot too, you have Sarr inbounding the ball to Boozer, and Caden is then the next guy. They pass it back and forth. They then get it to Caden, and you do, if you see the clip, Scheyer is somewhat saying hold it and also somewhat saying throw it overhead, but that's the problem. Isaiah Evans should not be that far down the court, even if you feel like the ball has been inbounded successfully. He's their best free throw shooter. He's their older, most experienced guy on the court, really, at that point. And you see him not necessarily saying that he ran away from the ball like he didn't want the moment, but he is running away from the ball and leaving it in the hands of Sarr, freshman, Boozer, freshman, Caden Boozer, freshman. Your older guys have to be in that backcourt at that moment in that situation. And this is what we mean when we say where the freshmen are playing. Duke put that situation in the hands of 3 guys under the age of 19, and they basically paid for it. The only wrong decision that could have been made that loses you the game is if you turn the ball over. Sarr gets it to Cameron Boozer. He should probably just hold on to it and let them foul him. The ball goes back to Sarr. At that point, Sarr, you could tell, kind of looked like deer in the headlights. Where do I throw this ball now? He sees Caden open, throws it to him. And again, at that point, Caden should just hold the ball. I think Caden was their second best free throw percentage shooter behind Isaiah Evans. And then it went Caden, and then I think it went Cam. And again, the only thing that beats you, especially with that much time on the clock, there's about 5 or 6 seconds left then, is trying to throw an overhead pass over 2 defenders with Silas and Mullins standing there. So again, it was just the only decision that could get you beat was that decision that they made there. It's very similar to Virginia Furman a couple years ago in the tournament as well. The only wrong decision is throwing the ball. Just hold on to the ball in that situation. But again, you have 3 freshmen trying to run out the clock. Sometimes as a coach, you have to save your players from being put in that situation and have Evans there or put Foster in the game. There's a lot of look, hindsight is always 20/20. And realistically, if Duke just holds on to the ball, you probably don't have this situation happen. You probably go to the free throw line. You might make both completely in the game, or you go 1 for 2, and Uconn has no ability at that point to beat you. They can just tie it and then go into overtime. And I think if you take a look at a team like Arizona, who is a team that is being led, so to speak, in point production by freshmen, you see great freshmen like Kurchenkov, Koa Pete, Braden Burries. They've been fantastic this year for Arizona. Now, Arizona could lose to Michigan and this take won't work, or they could lose to Uconn in the national championship, and again, it doesn't work. But I think when you look at the difference between Arizona and Duke, the head of the snake at Arizona is the best point guard in college basketball. Now, Jaden Bradley's not going to be the first point guard taken off the board in the NBA draft, but as far as it pertains to college basketball, I do think he is the best point guard. And when you have a guy like that, he can steady the ship, make the right decisions, and put those freshmen in situations where they can be great versus having the freshmen having to make those decisions. And if you watch Arizona versus Purdue basketball game in their Elite Eight matchup, when Bradley came out in that first half, the freshmen looked completely lost. They looked completely different. They didn't have that guy to slow things down, take control of the game, get a bucket when they needed it. He goes back in, they adjust, then in the second half, they completely roll, and he doesn't come out of the game. Duke hasn't had that point guard with all the freshman talent that they've had. And so I think if you're Scheyer, you look at the construction of the team going forward, it's fine to have those freshmen. And he has dabbled a bit with the older guys coming in. You look at Malik Brown, you look at James last year. It's been there, right? But at that point guard position, which is the most vital position in college basketball when it comes to March Madness, he hasn't had that really true senior laden experience point guard. And honestly, we haven't seen it in years at Duke. And I get Foster's injury came up with a lot of Duke fans, but clearly he was the reason Duke won in the St. John's game in the second half. He's not even out there on the court at the end of that game yesterday. But I don't think Caleb Foster was the point guard that was going to get Duke over the hump and win a national championship either. And so then you look at Caden Boozer, and Caden is a true freshman who has struggled and been up and down this year. And so many Duke fans said, look, we unlocked Caden in the ACC tournament. We're still going to win a national championship even if Foster doesn't come back. And realistically, that wasn't going to happen. And you saw it play out there. Your point guard did not make good decisions in the final moment. And so with this, I think Duke's method can work, but you have to be extremely intentional at that point guard position. And honestly, maybe next year's the year they get that with Foster coming back. Now, Foster and Duron Rippey is going to be a really interesting dynamic. You also throw Caden Boozer in that mix. Does Caden go pro? Does he come back? He's not. I don't think Caden's going to enter the transfer portal or Foster's going to enter the transfer portal. So it's either going to be you have all three of them together next year, or Caden goes, Foster and Duron stay, or maybe they both try to go. I don't know what Caleb Foster's stock value is right now with the NBA draft. I can't imagine it being very high. So I think he will come back, and it'll be the first senior point guard Duke has had really since you go back to 2015 Quinn Cook, who did play on and off the ball because that team did have Tyus Jones at the point for a lot of the season, but you had that senior guy that could also make good decisions. They win the national championship in 2015. But I just don't think you're going to win national championships with running the offense through Cameron Boozer and Cooper Flagg, sophomore Jeremy Roach, Trey Jones, and RJ Barrett with the Zion year in 2019. And if we go back and look at Duke in March since 2015, there's been some major head scratchers for them over the course of the last decade. 2016, you're blown out by Oregon. You've got Matt Jones, a sophomore Grayson Allen, and Derek Thornton coming off the bench. 2017, you're upset in the second round by South Carolina, who did go on to the Final Four. 2018, an overtime loss to Kansas with a critical turnover at the end from freshman Bagley when they were down 5 with about 40 seconds left. Turns the ball over. Game is done at that point. 2019, you're upset by Michigan State in the Elite Eight, and that was the Zion, RJ, Cam, and Trey year. 2020, COVID. 21 didn't make the tournament. That was the weird year Jalen Johnson left early. 2022, you lose to Carolina in the Final Four. 23, Scheyer's first year, you're manhandled by Tennessee, lose that by double digits. 24, lose to NC State in the Elite Eight. And then 25-26, a Houston blown lead and a Uconn blown lead. And again, like we said, it makes for a really interesting year next year in Cameron for Duke because of the situation with Boozer, Foster, and Duron. Duron is clearly the most talented out of the three. It's not even close to that. If you've watched him play, you understand the type of player he is. Now, he is a little bit undersized. I still think he'll have success in college. But do you want to enter March Madness with the decision-making process going through Duron and maybe a Cam? I don't think you want that. So I think that's where Foster comes into play. But again, now you have this situation, and maybe next year's group is 2015's group, and Foster then comes off the ball and plays shooting guard, and you have Duron, but Foster's the one really making the decisions at the end of the game. And maybe Duke finally gets over the hump and wins a national championship next year. But again, I just worry about that. It's not even really a worry. It's just we know this is difficult because we saw it play out for so many years with Cal. And the thing is, as good as Duke's classes have been, some of Cal's classes still put Duke's classes to shame. Like, people don't understand. There was players at Kentucky, MVP level players in the NBA that were coming off the bench. Duke hasn't had that yet. We'll see. Maybe one of these guys off the bench for Duke in a couple of years turns into an MVP player. But realistically, those Kentucky teams were even more stacked than these Duke teams with freshmen. For Cal to win that championship, it was a group that was littered with freshmen, but also had those experienced players in it. So I think it's interesting when you look at Kentucky, who did only win one national title over that stretch. Duke, in their one and done era, has only won one national title. And maybe last year's group was the group that should have done it, and they probably could have. Again, Proctor was the starting point guard. He was a junior. And maybe if Proctor as a senior this year on this team, and it wasn't Caleb Foster and it wasn't Caden Boozer having to make those decisions or play those games, maybe Duke does get over the hump this year. But it's a bunch of shoulda, coulda, wouldas right now at Duke. And over a decade now without winning a national championship, to me, is cause for concern and cause for a question. And I'm told by Duke fans all the time that national titles are banners, so we don't want to hear about the one seed, ACC championships, and things like that. If your standard is national championships, you guys have not met the standard for over a decade now. Kansas has a more recent national title. Carolina has a more recent national title. Villanova, UConn, all of these blue bloods have won national titles more recently than Duke has. So I think it does open up the conversation. I don't think Scheyer should be on the hot seat. I don't think anything like that. And I've seen that coming from people as well. Duke is a good basketball program. They've been one of the best. They've been a standard in college basketball. I don't think they're the standard of college basketball right now. And realistically, when you look at this, if you continue to rely on freshmen year in, year out, I think you're going to see many more results like we've seen over the last decade for this Duke basketball program. Maybe next year is the year they get over the hump, but I feel like they keep saying that every single year. We've learned from this past mistake. We won't let it happen this year. Then they do it again. We've learned this year. Now we know they do it again. And this is where I think Scheyer is a great coach and is going to be a fantastic coach. He's not one of the top coaches in college basketball yet because he is still learning. So all those Duke fans need to pump the brake on how great Duke is. Sheyer's the best coach. There's still room to grow and why I think there's still hope going forward. But realistically, you've got to figure out the situation of having to play through freshmen at the end of basketball games. It's not working for you guys. But that's me. I might be wrong about that. You guys can say what you want. Again, I appreciate you being here. Please hit like, share the video, hit subscribe to your name in the portal. We are so close to 7,000 in our first year, which was our goal by the end of March Madness. So please hit subscribe. We appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you on the next one.